Throughout my years in middle school, I have been considered a political enthusiast. From debating people and discovering truth to having blood vessels nearly pop out of my head. So naturally, I was super excited to see the 2020 presidential debate. Until I heard Trump say, "Nothing about you is smart," and Biden responding, "You're a clown." Although watching the first presidential debate might have seemed comedic to us as viewers, we need to remember that it's a presidential debate. It shouldn't have felt like I was watching a Dave Chappelle special. If we reflect upon this debate, we see that there's a real epidemic that is haunting our country: partisan politics. Today, we will examine the causes and effects of the partisan divide, before finally fabricating solutions to repair these cracks. For centuries, we have been warned by political figures that the formation of parties will divide America. George Washington stated in his farewell address only two things: not to form political parties is one of them. This becomes more self-evident during the Civil War. The Union against the evils of slavery and the Confederacy for the evils of slavery. This shows how far people are willing to go to fight for their ideologies. Throughout the years of war, separation of families and bloodshed occurred. Both sides fought neck and neck for the truth, which all men are created equal. If we go further into the future, to 1954 and 1968, we'll see that there's an uprising divide. At this point in time, we're in the Civil Rights era. Above the Supreme Court, there's an inscription that states equal justice under the law. This would finally be applied to African Americans. Fast forward to the early 21st century, when it became impossible to sit in the same room with someone with differing political ideologies. When President Obama became elected, the right severely criticized him. And when President Trump came elected, the left severely criticized him. It's sad to see that the brotherly and sisterly love that was shared to start the nation, derived from the principles of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, have disintegrated into documents with both containing sequence of letters. In the span of 224 years, it has clearly shown that the divide from the right and the left are extremely tense. As we fail to heed George Washington's advice, Americans find it harder to repair the cracks that haunt our society. As explained by Michael Barber and Nolan McCarty in Causes and Consequences of Polarization, there are two main causes for the current partisan divide. First, the external environment that would show a change in society. Secondly, the internal environment. It is centered around formal and informal institutional congresses that have amplified partisan conflict. At the founding of our nation, Washington warned the American people about political parties. He stated, "It agitates communities with ill-founded jealousies and false alarms, kindles animosity of one part against another, foments occasionally riots and insurrection." If we reflect on this piece of advice, Washington tries to get the point across that political parties lead to unjustified jealousy and false information, hostility between the two parties, riots, and violent uprisings against the government. Right now, we sadly fall under all the criteria in which Washington was trying to avoid. Never in my life have I felt so divided from my fellow American. I don't mean this because of COVID-19, but rather because we have to pick a side instead of believing in what we think is right. As Abraham Lincoln once stated, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Who are these people that Abraham Lincoln is talking about? It's obvious that he's talking about the American people, both Union and Confederacy. He's creating a sense of unity that even though the South lost the war, they are still considered the people. As the fractionation and separation of Republicans and Democrats occur, it makes it harder for man to see man as brother rather than enemy. The American people don't remember what it's like to feel united. They only remember what it feels like to be divided. The age, race, ethnicity, gender educational attainment, religious affiliation make the defining qualities of an American. Those factors make America such a unique place. However, now we don't view these factors the same way. We see that voters must consistently share views with their parties. And just because Republicans are Republicans, they must despise Democrats, and vice versa. This partisan has gone so far that it even affects who people marry. Parents feel uncomfortable with their children marrying someone who has differing political ideologies. This has developed into extremist groups. On August 28, 1955, a young man named Emmett Till was taken away from his family and murdered. His death would create the civil rights movement that, like Dr. King stated, was to cash the check. This created a good group that, even though used common sense, might have been considered an extremist group. As we look outside our windows, we see that American cities have been destroyed and crime rates increasing, as reported by the Department of Justice. More and more of our fellow Americans are being killed and insulted as time goes on. For what? To seek justice? To cash the check? It's not clear. All that is clear is that due to the media, they have amplified the situation, are participating in creating deeper partisanship and dividing Americans even more. Instead of giving the people the whole story, they give us fractions. Instead of giving the truth, they give us their opinions. They give stories out of context, dehumanize people with differing beliefs, and support and glorify people who fit their narrative. A study was conducted by Joe Kelly with the Courthouse News Service that 84% of people believe that the media is responsible for partisanship in the U.S. It doesn't help that the media outlets that are supposed to fight for the people, by the people, and with the people are not. In America, there are 5 main differences in ideology that people of both parties have difficulty agreeing with: gun policies, racial attitudes, climate change, social safety, and immigration. The differences span from 43% to 58%. For all of these beliefs, the majority of Republicans and Democrats cannot agree with each other. Due to the fact that these parties can rarely agree with each other, it becomes harder for policies that can help the American public pass, which cause the cracks to widen. It's okay if it's okay if people cannot agree on fundamental doctrines of thought. However, when we can't discuss ideas civilly and with respect, this is where the problem occurs. It would be great to snap our fingers and get rid of the problem. However, the only thing in between the thought and the outcome is action. The action that needs to be taken to fix the partisan problem is getting to know people. By getting to know people, it reduces prejudice. It stops stereotyping Republicans as pro-gun and anti-abortion maniacs and all Democrats as anti-gun and pro-abortion libtards. When I used to debate people, I thought right when they mentioned a policy they wanted to see enacted, they were liberal or conservative. I sat down with them and we had a rational conversation. I was astonished to see that not every part of their ideologies corresponded to their party that they belonged to. It would be later in my life that I realized that it's okay to think differently. America was founded on different beliefs. By not agreeing with your party 100%, you understand each individual policy. If it also helps to see Republicans or Democrats as people with feelings. This will help to get rid of the Republican and Democratic policy and partisan and create American policies. As we look back into the past of American history, we'll ask ourselves, what does it mean to be an American? There are only so many defining qualities in which an American is an American, which are to have all the freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution and Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal, and that we are endowed by our Creator. We live in an age of spin, where Republicans try to destroy Democrats and Democrats try to destroy Republicans. This needs to stop. We need to realize that there is no Latino America, there is no Black America, there is no Asian America, there is the United States of America that strives off of the principles of life, liberty, and justice for all. Thank you.